Hello and good morning. Today I'm going to take you through my scaling Scrum experience with facilitating multi-team impediments across a number of teams. So the organizational context was really within a utility company within Australia, and the implementation of Dynamics CRM was the program of work that we undertook. We had 4 Scrum teams working at that stage. And the main goal of the organizational context here was a reduction of legacy platforms. We wanted to leverage the benefits of Scrum and getting rapid user feedback. We had a goal of optimizing through configuration over customization and keeping the process lean. We had some constraints in regards to some of the shared services, and the fact that the shared services also supported BAU operational activity. And the digital team had this goal and was following a Scrum pattern, but perhaps maybe the organizational appetite was a little bit different. And the Scrum teams had to operate as an agile bubble within an existing organizational hierarchy. So that presented a few problems along the way. The impediment that I'm keen to focus on is that not all components could be facilitated by the team. So not all of the skills required to do the work were located within the team's remit. And whilst it was desired to follow that approach, it wasn't initially able to be achieved. So on the surface, the Dynamic CRM Scrum teams were reliant on the support from middleware and other core systems. And the resources for those also had a day job, which was to support operational activity, any operational issues, etc. So for the Scrum team, the impact really was on the definition of done and the team's ability to be potentially releasable at the end of each sprint. The business impact here was that the queue approach to engage with those middleware and core system resources caused delays. And whilst the team tried to proactively find ways to mitigate that concern or mitigate that issue, it often ended up in rework. The cost of the Scrum team was around about 80,000 Australian dollars per sprint. So that's something that if sprint goals weren't achieved was a direct impact to the team and the success of the approach. Looking at the emotional impacts, the delay to releases impacted business acceptance and adoption of new change. So that was something that was a real problem for the success factors of taking on board new ways of working. And I guess looking internally, the impact on the Scrum team's morale due to the business blame on delivery success took its toll over time as well. Underlying root causes were that the resource utilization-based approach to decision-making was an issue. So constantly keeping those vendor resources engaged all the time doing work meant that there was a queuing system. There are other causes. By having multiple vendors on site, there was often a conflict between sort of client-vendor needs or vendor-vendor needs because multiple vendors were involved. And part of the problem in regards to having that sort of an approach is that often there's a reluctance to share too much. And so sometimes can cause, and in this case, one of the root causes was commercial integrity or commercial impacts and IP. So the intervention point really became being really clear on understanding that we wanted to onboard these integration resources within the Scrum team, and that outcome would make a significant difference to the throughput of the team and also the success of the sprint goals. So the clear actionable request became bring on board middleware and core system developers into the Scrum team. By setting clear responsibilities and commercial boundaries, we were also mitigating the concern around trust and commercial integrity. So the journey of pursuing this intervention can be quite frustrating. So past interventions or discovering what the unsuccessful approaches were, we created an impediments backlog so that it made it visible that these sorts of impediments existed. But it was often hard to find or get management to own decision-making around those items. So gaining their commitment was a real underlying problem. Inviting management to team events were a way of perhaps make visible the issues around the decisions that had been made. So inviting them to sprint planning or sprint review, seeing where the team may have issues in committing to the sprint backlog during sprint planning because of these issues, or perhaps maybe the outcomes through the review, the sprint review, articulating where problems existed in meeting the sprint goal in the end. It was hard to get management along to those meetings and see the value in coming along as an opportunity of gaining visibility. We created a process for handing over work to shared services into their queue and being a priority. But the sprint time box still suffered. Often new work would be coming in. And we even went down the path of scheduling dependencies, sprint ahead or something similar to that. But because of a lack of understanding of the way of working, the shared services resources didn't seem to have the same sense of urgency around what a sprint boundary meant, or a sprint time box meant. So we aimed to create a successful reference model. That was our strategy. So we created a new opportunity to gather data. So we trained resources in the way of working so they understood the constraints and the rules. So conducting exercises like build your own Scrum and things like that really started to let the penny drop and understand how the team was working. We involved the shared services team members in the definition of the problem. So understanding the pain points, we used in this picture here in the middle, what the path or the workflow was, where we were introducing change was in yellow, and where the pain points were in pink. So we were able to articulate exactly where they needed to be involved and how integral they were to the end-to-end process. So we also included the key decision makers to witness the interventions so that we could ensure that those resources could join the team and that the key decision makers understood as well how important it was. And here we have a very happy product owner who went through that particular journey. So the lessons learned for me and for the team, from a metrics point of view, the benefits were that the cost savings over time was in the vicinity of about $240,000, which is a significant amount, and would allow you to look at bringing in other work through that time saving. Overall time reduced, so we'd saved 3 sprints worth over the period of that release cycle, and there is no measure on the morale benefits. There was so much more engagement. Team members were working in pairs directly with these resources on a day-to-day basis. So morale, the benefits to morale is priceless. So key learnings for me through this is to escalate early and escalate where the decisions are made, perhaps maybe by establishing an executive action team that can help you progress those and make those interventions a lot easier and faster. Don't shy away from the hard conversations. Have the hard conversations as soon as you need them. Make the issues visible. Is another key element. So making them visible is one thing, having the hard conversations is another, but taking them where the real decisions are made is critical. Articulate the problems in terms of business terms, or articulate the problem in reference to business terminology. Allow the business to understand and the decision makers within the business to understand in their own language what the problems are. and give them the key metrics or the facts that they need to be able to make the right decisions, and manage the intervention until it's done. Don't let the intervention become invisible to you, thinking that it's in control. It's not done until it's done, and stick with it until you get the result. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. Cheers.